I'm stronger than I've ever been before. When you're feeling weak, we're stronger. We are strong. We're stronger. Stronger than we've ever been before.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Stronger with Armstrong. I'm your host, Eddie Armstrong, and I am delighted today to take you on a magical journey to the southern parts of Arkansas, all-time Arkansas. This is a near and dear episode for me personally. My great-grandparents derived from this land down here in all-time Arkansas. I can remember as a kid playing in the mud and picking watermelons with my late Uncle Charles Armstrong, my grandfather's brother. And so special day in July, weather's warm, birds are chirping, and more importantly, we've got an amazing guest, an amazing friend, someone who I've looked up to and admire, Dr. DeWayne Goldmon. He's had an illustrious career in agriculture. He was raised on the farm himself, hardworking man. But I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Goldmon when I was a young guy working my way up in government relations for the chicken magnate at the time, now the largest meat producing company in the world, Tyson Foods, out of Northwest Arkansas. And I think you were with Monsanto at that time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, Dr. Goldmon, thank you so much and welcome to Stronger with Armstrong.
Pleasure to be here, sir.
It's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
Each of these episodes are designed to highlight the strength, resilience, and paint this tapestry, this mosaic of sorts, of the wonderful people of Arkansas from all walks of life. Extraordinary and ordinary Arkansans that are doing their day-to-day work, going about life, and trying to tell a story of what makes Arkansas stronger, what makes us stronger in our work, in the pulpit, in the corporate offices, in the streets, and in your neighborhoods and suburban America. So we're going to end to interview and meet great people. So we hope that you enjoy this show. We're going to dive right in with some conversation. Sure. This is easy peasy. We just want to have a conversation today. Thank you, number one, for bringing us to this farm. Man, I've seen farms. I know a little bit about farming, but not anything near. Know about combines. Shout out to my friend Joe Jett out there in Success, Arkansas, who is a crop irrigation guy. He flies the planes over and does the fertilizing, but he also puts out fires. Anyway, shout out former member of the House of Representatives who taught me a lot about farming too. And one thing's for sure and two things for certain. I do know through reading and educating myself through books like The Merchants of Grain that agriculture is still the true heartbeat of the Western world.
Yes.
It is how we were built. It is how we got into the arms dealing. It is how wars were funded at one point in time. And essentially how we built the United States of America. It's through agriculture. So we're going to have this one way or the other for as long as we have our foreseeable lives. But I've got some questions for you. I want you to just take your time and think through these questions. But we're going to tee off with, if you could tell our listeners out there who DeWayne Goldmon is, who is Dr. Goldmon, who was he before he was Dr. Goldmon, where you come from, your education background, and how you ended up here with 400 acres. By the way, that's 400 football fields. If you equate that, 400 acres, am I right?
We got 400 here. The whole farm is about 1,000, but we're sitting in the middle of about 400 that operate here.
Wonderful.
This is the main site. We got a couple others that we still operate.
Okay. Well, tell us about Dr. Goldmon. Who are you before you were Dr. Goldmon?
If I told you that DeWayne Goldmon was just a little country boy from Hooker, Arkansas, that would be correct. I am the 10th of 11 kids born to Curtis and Barbara Goldmon. Curtis and Barbara Goldmon met as kids of farmers themselves. So I'm a third generation farmer on both sides of my maternal and paternal lineage. But the 10th of 11 kids, and we grew up on a small farm, about a 300-acre farm. Cotton was the main cash crop, but we also had a big vegetable garden. We called it a truck patch. We grew soybeans and other things. But growing up on the farm, Eddie, as you might recall, there were some pleasant days. I started chopping cotton when I was about 4 or 5 years old out of a bad decision. Because I didn't want to stay home with my little sister. I wanted to go to the field with the big boys. And so after I clowned for a couple of weeks, Daddy took me up on it, and there I was,
That was your discipline.
That was my discipline. That was he said, you asked for this, I'm gonna give it to you. So I started sharing a row of cotton with my 18-month older brother, Moses, and didn't like it after the first couple of hours, but it was too late because I had shown that I could do it, and Dad had put me in the workforce. So I started to hate agriculture, as you can imagine. But as I got up in school, junior high school certainly, I started to get more intrigued about what I call kind of the rhythms of agriculture. Daddy, why do you plant this before this? And why do you do this before you plant? And why do you do this? And why do you set the plows this way and this kind of stuff? Sometimes he would answer my questions. Sometimes he would send me on a journey to find out. And so much so that I had gotten so intrigued, and I was pretty good in math and sciences. So I decided, by the time I graduated high school, I decided that I was going to be a farmer. That was my sole intention. So I go to the University of Arkansas, started out in ag engineering, quickly switched to agronomy, minored in ag business, and was well on my way to what I thought was going to be a successful farming career. Graduated in 1985 with a BS. And I took a position as a county agent intern, fresh out of college. And in that position, I learned a lot. Crop production, animal, forage, the whole thing, all of agriculture. But I also learned that if I was going to have a career in extension, which I wanted as a fallback, if I was going to have a career in extension, I would at least need a master's degree in order to be in any kind of supervisory position. So that, plus a undergrad advisor who became my major professor and a strong mentor, Dr. Cavanis, led me to pursue first a master's, and then he encouraged me to go on for a doctorate. And so I did that, thinking that I was going to be a professor, teaching and doing research. Went to Iowa State, 2 degrees from Fayetteville, undergrad degree in agronomy, master's in soybean breeding. Went to Iowa State to study crop production physiology, also in agronomy.
Back up for just a second. For our listeners out there, you know, we're Southern folks.
Yeah.
Agriculture I get,
Yeah.
but my friends in Italy and France or New York that ain't never seen a farm and wouldn't know what agronomy is. Could
Yeah.
you break that down for them and let them know?
I can break it down a little further because when I graduated high school, I don't know that I'd ever heard the term agronomy.
Sure.
I certainly didn't know that that was a major.
Sure.
Agronomy is simply crop production and soil management.
Okay.
And now it's fully integrated to a lot of other things, but at its core, it's crop production and soil management. It's farming. It's crops, seeds, soil, fertilizer, the whole 9 yards. It's the science behind agriculture. And for someone, again, with an intriguing mind that wants to know about the science of agriculture, for me, it was a perfect major. But it's crop production and soil management and all the things that go in producing a crop.
Got it.
So it became my discipline. So when I go to Iowa State, I also was in a position where I was recruiting and advising undergraduate students while I was pursuing my PhD, which I thought would well equip me to be on a university campus. But in that program, I started interacting with the ag industry, a lot of companies that we asked for support, for scholarship, for internships, for those kinds of things. And I got close to several different companies. So much so that by the time I finished my degree, I took a position in the ag industry.
Got it.
And that set on a whole new course. So I spent about 4 years with a company called American Cyanamid, which is now part of BASF. But doing some soybean breeding work and some other things, learned a lot. And then after that, I joined Monsanto Company.
Okay.
And at Monsanto, I was thrust at the forefront of biotechnology. So I did research in just about all southern row crops, soybeans, cotton, corn, rice. I did that. And so I also managed products in soybeans. I had responsibility for, kind of technical management around already soybeans as that product was being launched. And so that taught me a lot. And then I did a similar thing in cotton as we were launching some cotton seed brands, and I was a product development and marketing manager for that. And then during this time, I also tried to maintain strong relationships with universities, our 1862 land grant universities,
Indeed.
but also our 1890 land grant universities, those historically black colleges and universities.
Indeed.
19 of them across the South. that were there to teach agricultural and mechanical arts, initially to the recently freed slaves, and later to black farmers and ranchers and landowners across the country.
The AMNNs.
AMNN.
I got you.
The Southern A&M, Alabama A&M.
Alcorns.
All of those. So I had a pretty good Rolodex of people at those universities. I'd done some special projects with them. In 2009, the company was going through some reorganization. And I got a call from my boss and my boss's boss. I was told to be in my office on Monday morning. I was going to get a call from them and the head of our government affairs group. And they said, we're going to present you with an offer, and I think you'll like it. I think it'll be good for you and the company. So that launched the last half of my career with the company, which was in government affairs. And I think that's when you and I kind of got close. But in that role, I learned a lot. I still tried to maintain a technical presence because of my agronomic background. But I learned a lot about how things are done, why things are done, and more importantly, how certain people get left out. Because the saying in our government affairs group was, you know what, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably going to get consumed. You're probably going to get eaten. If you're not there speaking forward, advocating for your issues, your constituents, how this is going to impact you as a farmer, as a landowner, as a black farmer, then that portion of this legislation very well may not include you. It may not consider your unique circumstances. And so I really got more comfortable being an advocate, what I call an agvocate, advocating for agriculture, an advocate, So
Agvocate. Take note. We're gonna hashtag that agriculture advocate, not advocate. Right. I like it.
And so it really had an opportunity to witness that thing come in full circle. And it reminded me, again, 10 of 11 kids, it reminded me of some conversations around the dinner table with the family where mom and dad would be talking about, issues of the day, growing up in the 60s and 70s, right on the cusp of integration, being one of a few blacks in a class, but being comfortable in that environment. It reminded me of those settings when I started advocating more, kind of across the country. But it also reminded me of the importance of continuing to do that. So you asked about who DeWayne Goldmon is. He's a product of that environment. He's a product of learning the value of hard work. And I mean, with Curtis Goldmon, it's no excuse hard work. I mean, if you're sick, you stay at home. But if you stay at home, you don't get to do after work, you don't get to participate in the fun stuff because you're sick, right? If you're not sick, you're going to work and you do whatever. You talk about faith. If you didn't feel like going to church that Sunday, you couldn't leave the place. It was just those kinds of disciplinary things that I kind of grew up with that helped shape actually the conversion of DeWayne Goldmon to Dr. Goldmon. I mean, it was that same basic stuff that, still with me today.
That's amazing, and it's really rich and sage advice in there. You mentioned words like maintain and curiosity and being at the table versus being on the table. Yeah. For our listeners out there that are going through their careers or young people saying that they can't find a job you got to get to the table.
Right.
And if the table's small or large, if it's a profession you love or hate, the key is to be at the table, is what I'm hearing. Right. And then you talked and spoke about the word, and it stood out to me, maintain, and your curiosity. As early as a child, you were curious, so you were asking questions, and that led to your questions becoming the reason you became an advocate.
Yes.
Talk to us about what kept you rooted in farming after you became an advocate. The decades of how your experience as a third-generation farmer shaped your approach to leadership and business, and leadership that took you all the way to the nation's capital and the White House under the Biden administration. Segue into, what farming did to keep you rooted, but that also took you to this appointment, and tell our listeners what that appointment was, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem. You know, it's funny, Eddie, when you talk about that, I have to think back. I started farm. You know, I grew up on a farm. My goal was to farm. Had I tried to start farming fresh out of college, I doubt that I would have made it because I had the wrong paradigm in mind. I wasn't deeply rooted enough. I was pretty good on the technical part of it, but the business side probably would have consumed me.
Yeah.
By doing it the way I did it, it helped me be a better businessman.
You did your homework.
Yeah, and I had a chance to see a lot more farmers doing it across the country,
Sure.
across the world even. But the thing that really kind of galvanized my farming was the first time that I personally experienced discrimination. So when I started out farming, my goal was to grow big because, you know, you got to be a certain size. This stuff you see around here is pretty expensive, and it's not, a lot of it's not brand new. But farming is a highly expensive profession. If you invest and do it well, you can make it work. If you just want it because it's shiny and new, it's probably not going to work, right? So I was going to get big, and I was getting big. I was taking on more acres, and I got up to like a couple thousand acres. But they weren't quality acres. They were acres that needed improvement. And when I started to try and improve them, I got cut off, and it hurt. So I had to essentially, after about 4 or 5 years, I had to essentially start over, but I had a new paradigm in mind. And it wasn't to get bigger as much as it was to get better. Quality, improving the land. So this farm you see has been pretty much precision level, participating in programs, making it more efficient to irrigate, equally important, making it more efficient to drain. And I've tried to do that across the farm, being a good steward of the land, taking care of those that take care of me, my landlords, the people that help me. All those things I've tried to incorporate in the farm because that makes good business sense. But the other thing that the discrimination did was it expanded my horizons. When one suffers from discrimination, most people that I've talked to, and I'll come to the career, the position at USDA in a minute, most people that I talk to, first thing you feel like is, this is very personal.
Sure.
They are picking on me.
Sure.
And it's kind of embarrassing, and I don't want anybody to know.
Sure.
But the first time you run into someone who suffered the same fate, bonds are created. Alliances are created. And power is generated. There's a certain amount of synergy that's generated from you having someone who's gone through a similar plight, right? And so your circle of advocates kind of increases, right? And so I experienced that. I experienced that in talking about the things that happened to me, really explaining the root of some of the problems that I faced, that the things that caused that. And my circle of influence got a little bigger. I started talking to other advocacy groups and community-based organizations and other universities and people and actually elected officials. My first foray into talking to congressmen and senators that we need some help with this. Actually having a few successes. Again, to make sure that the right people are at the table. Probably one of the most pivotal moments was when there was an opportunity at Monsanto. We had some issues that came up. Monsanto was getting ready to buy a cottonseed company. And black farmers and cotton, black folks in cotton have a long history, most of it not so pleasant, right? So when you start talking about blacks in cotton, it's a delicate subject, but we still had some black cotton farmers. And so the issue was, how is Monsanto buying this cottonseed company going to affect black cotton farmers? And there was some information out there that said that it would be detrimental to them. I said, I don't understand that. So we set out to find the truth. And in setting out to find the truth, we took an opportunity to create an advisory group, what we thought was going to be an advisory group to the company, to help advise it on this acquisition. And we wanted to expand it. We wanted this acquisition, and we also wanted to have this group close enough to the company that they could advise us on other issues of importance to them.
Sure.
With kind of a gentleman's agreement that we want to understand you, we want to understand your history, we want to understand your problems to the extent that we can. We'll put resources behind it to help come up with solutions to it. What we thought was going to be an advisory group to the company actually became an independent organization.
You don't say.
Yeah.
You oftentimes, excuse me for interrupting, but I have to hearken upon this because we're in this heightened state of eliminating DEI and taking history out of certain elements of our education systems. Fine. Whatever must be done under the guise of government, okay, I get it. However, your point harkens to something that says we all need each other.
Yes.
And
very much so.
Oftentimes you might need somebody to see around the corner for you, though they may not look like you, may not come from your same background, may not even praise the same religions or worship the same way. But we need each other in the interconnectedness of being able to see around corners. And
exactly right.
When you're thinking about putting a red line through taking things out of libraries or putting a red line through DEI programs, I know many corporate executives, include myself at one point in time, that not only was my job in government relations, it was also to help them see around the corner and leverage opportunities where they may not have found them. And so it sounds like a little bit of what grew out of this was that for Monsanto.
Yes. And so, you're exactly right. Because if you are a black farmer, and what we found was, that initial meeting is about a dozen growers in there. It ranged in size from 200 or 300 acres up to over 10,000 acres. And it wasn't about the size as much as it was about their multi-generational affinity for agriculture. These were farmers. These were third, fourth, fifth generation farmers who had been there. And the saying was, you know what? You guys are born. You're not created. You're born. And I consider myself kind of part of that lot. Me being a third generation farmer, I was born into it.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, but the other thing you find out is that once you establish that certain amount of trust and familiarity, there are things that can come from that. There's an opportunity. You talk about helping people see around the corner. It's important to acknowledge people's unique histories and how they got to this point. We were talking about black folks and cotton. Most of our people chopped cotton, picked cotton. They didn't necessarily grow it for themselves. They were sharecroppers, and before that, they were slaves. But out of that, there were certain people that developed a love for agriculture, and they chose it as a profession. They should be able to fully explore that profession without barriers of discrimination and being omitted from certain things. And so this group helped explain that to a major company. And they did it in a very positive way, and they became an independent organization. I served as an advisor. When I retired from the company, I was actually their executive director. What I thought was going to be for a 3 or 4 year term. Well, when President Biden was elected, the country, as you recall, wanted to focus on new things, new priorities. He wanted his cabinet level members to focus on new things and new priorities. And one of the key focal points of USDA then was equity, racial equity in particular. Because when you look at equity and you look at the impact of race on American agriculture, it's a pretty stark difference. What I learned in those 4 years that I was there, I was pretty familiar with the plight of black farmers in the country. I learned a lot about the plight of Native Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, and you know what? They are all uniquely different. But all of those issues are important. And it's important to have those issues at the table, those people at the table that can speak up for those things and advocate for them to make sure that we get this policy right, that people are included and not left out. This is a multi-generational profession. Now, it's changing a little bit now, but the saying used to be that there's really only two ways into agriculture, into farming.
Okay.
You're either born into it or you marry into it, right? And now it's a little different because, we're getting some larger farms and there's some corporate farms and those kinds of things. But there's still a lot of truth to that. The people that are in agriculture grew up in agriculture.
Got it.
They developed an affinity for agriculture at a young age, kind of like DeWayne Goldmon.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to choose that as a profession. What I'm seeing is that that's not unique to white folks. It's not unique to Black, Latino, Native American. You can find those subsets of people in each of those cultures, each having their own unique histories, each to be appreciated and supported. And that's when I think of equity, that's what comes to mind. That's what I spent 4 years doing some pretty hard work, trying to make sure that we were delivering on that as we tried to deliver USDA programs across the country.
Tell us about your appointment to Joe Biden.
Yeah, I served.
And what was your title? What was your role?
I served as the first ever
Come on now.
senior advisor for racial equity. I reported to the Secretary of Agriculture,
Okay.
Tom Vilsack. And just for the listeners, Tom Vilsack reported to a guy named Joe Biden.
I remember Governor Vilsack.
Yeah, I reported to Secretary Vilsack, who reported to Joe Biden. And we had a number of things that we were trying to do. We had to stand up and support an equity commission, which was created to look at opportunities for equity across the country. Racial equity, urban versus rural, large versus small. It was all encompassing, but I tried to keep a keen focus on racial equity because that was such an important denominator in who was in and who was out, right? But we also worked across the department to make sure that the department itself, from a employee composition, was reflective of the American agriculture system. You know, there were major changes that we tried to support. And a lot of it was, you know, couched as, you know, DEIA, which, you know, may not be a popular word right now. But at its core, equity is simply making sure that the right people are, here we go again, at the table, that their issues are supported, that they're valued and appreciated, and given a chance to create in these opportunities as they come forward.
We're going to take a pause here. I want to, when we come back in, talk about resilience. I've got a number of farmer friends, and I couldn't help but to think about my buddy Brandon Finch, farm family, like you said, born into this. And he talks about the difficulties. I listened to Joe Jett, several of my farm friends. It's not easy work.
No.
You have to have some real resilience and grit in this business. So I want to talk about resilience, and then I also want to talk about parenting and the legacy of what you're leaving and raising your children in this space when we come back. We'll be right back with you folks.
Thank you.
So let's talk about resilience.
Sure.
This business isn't easy. This work isn't easy. And you either do it for the love or you're doing it, you know, provide a means for your family. You hearkened upon a key word. Race and color has nothing to do with that word equity. You don't, if you're dividing up any company, people get a share of it, as you said, at the table, so they get a share of equity ownership. And you take out diversity and take out inclusion, but equity is essential. Let's talk about how you've raised your children and their stake in this. And more importantly, you know, how do you instill hope and resilience to the next generation with farming or rural America drying up and young people wanting to get to the higher lands, but some are coming back to our Delta roots and moving to slower pace of life and more calmer, peaceful grounds. Talk to us a bit about how you've raised your children and your family and what you've instilled in them that could hopefully be some advice sage for young people today to capture what real resilience means.
You know, Deborah and I, we raised two kids. One could say, maybe, that, you know, both of them kind of have special needs. Camille, our daughter, is deadly allergic to nuts.
Whom is a professor at UNC Chapel Hill, North Carolina, home of Dean Dome and the great Michael Jordan.
That's right. That's right.
Shout out, Camille.
Yeah, she's a history professor. But that set us on a journey. Now, fortunately, my wife is a dietitian.
Okay.
She took care of that, right?
Okay.
2 years later, Dale was born, and Dale had a hearing defect essentially from birth, got fitted with a cochlear implant when he was about 4 years old. And our goal for both Camille and Dale was for them to have as near normal life as they could. So we said that we wanted Dale to be in the hearing. If there was a way for him to hear, we wanted him to do that. It panned out. Dale, Camille is, she's a history professor. All girl, maybe. She would come over here and spend a little time on the farm, look around. But now Dale would come over here and he would spend significant time on the farm and considered agriculture as a profession. But Dale is also extremely talented. I think maybe the hearing impairment gave him special talents in other places, but he is one hell of a gifted artist. He can take a native scene, a natural scene, and recreate it with amazing specificity, details. He's been able to do this since he was a kid. Him spending time on the farm, and he has operated and can operate anything on this farm. He's done it since he was about 4 or 5 years old. And he'll come down now, and usually 1 or 2 weekends a year, he'll come down, help me on the farm. He's a landscape architect, working as a landscape designer in Virginia, doing really well. But just about every day, he's going to ask me, "What'd you do on the farm today? How's this looking? What's going on? Did you go down to this field? Check that." He just does it. He checks in. He's interested in it. Camille took a slightly different route. She is, like I say, she's a history professor, 2 degrees from the University of Arkansas, did a PhD at Emory, did a postdoc at Princeton. When she was doing her master's work, for some reason, Eddie, her master's thesis was on blacks who own land across the rural South.
Paying attention to her daddy and her grandpa,
Yeah, so her dissertation, which she's working on a book, but her dissertation was on rights and privileges associated with land ownership in the Alabama Black Belt. And she continues to do research in that area and is doing some tremendous work and becoming, in her own right, a very good historian dealing with those issues. Deborah and I just tried to support them, and they chose their own professions. So, Dale found an opportunity in Virginia, is doing really well. Camille landed at, Chapel Hill, has gone through her first year of teaching and doing research and is doing well. And they both, continue to be, interested and very curious about the farm. I think what happened as they were in the house watching the struggles, I think it had more of an impact on them than I thought, because they, in their own way, got to see a lot of the same things that I did as a kid growing up. When you're growing up around the farm, there are certain things that become ingrained in you. One is patience. We're looking at corn here now. We're looking at corn, and that corn, it's going to take about 120, 130 days from the time I plant it to the time I harvest it. I can't plant that corn and expect to harvest it the next week. It's not going to work, right? It takes patience. Now, it looks pretty healthy right now. It's been irrigated about 3 or 4 times. It's been fertilized. We've kept the weeds out of it. If I fail to do any of those things, my yield at the end of the year is going to be less than optimum, right? So I've got to stay on top of it. I've got to nurture it. Kind of like you do a kid growing up with something that you care about. And what I now see in Dale and Camille is apparently they picked up more of that than I gave them credit for as they were kids growing up, because of the questions they ask and the way they go about their normal lives. When I think about society now, I think about the shift that this country has made from an agrarian society to a more urban, right now society.
Gotta have
We've lost those things. I want it right now. I want a smartphone. I mean, you and I can have a debate as to who won the Super Bowl in 1980. Somebody Google it.
It's done.
It's done. It's done. You know what? But those things around patience and waiting, we're kind of getting away from that. I think what the farm says is that not going to let you get away from that. Because you know what?
You gotta.
You plant this seed, I don't care what. Now, we have different hybrids with different maturity dates and all that. We can manipulate a little bit. It's going to have to be some time between planting and harvest. There's going to have to be certain things that are going to have to be scripted and done in order for that to be successful. That's the thing that agriculture teaches us. And as sexy as agriculture is getting, and as much as technology now is dictating what we do, fundamentally, Mr. Armstrong, we still got to plant a seed, or birth a calf or pig, and nurture and feed that animal and harvest it in order for us to feed, fuel, and clothe ourselves. And that's going to continue to be what makes this world turn.
Resilience, no different than planting that seed. And Arkansas is rich in many ways. It's the natural state, but we're the home of timber farming, rice farming, now bromine and lithium farming, as we addressed in another episode, hog farming, cattle farming, poultry farming. I mean, minerals, diamonds farming. There are several different angles, but it all starts, like you said, with the planting of that seed and the time that you have to put in, which then creates resilience, because you can't beat time. You cannot fight with time. Let's travel into another space. USDA, Monsanto, timing. Me and you came to another ground of getting engaged in the medical cannabis industry. I was very excited when I saw this industry taking a budding shape in the state of Arkansas and across the country. Multi-billion-dollar industry, but my real passion was around what it could do to medically treat, help, and support those that truly needed it. Our cancer patients. My sister was my first test case study. How did you segue into that industry? I get it because I've been through many cannabis farms. I know the timing it takes under these lights and the water and nurturing and pruning off these sugar leaves to actually get the best quality trichomes and buds, watching how they go from just a mere clone to 6 feet tall plants. Talk to us a bit about your exposure into that industry.
I would have to say, Mr. Armstrong, that it was different than what I expected. It was less than what I expected, in that the cannabis industry was more. It had more outside influence than I initially gave credit for.
Not such a novice industry, very behind the scenes, controlled by some big boys.
And so, you know, I think there was interest in me because on paper, I probably looked pretty good. I mean, you got a PhD guy that's farming in the industry and, you know, familiar with, you know, government works and this kind of thing. I don't want to get, you know, too much light on myself, but on paper it probably looks pretty good.
Sure, you got a compliance background, you got a regulatory background, and you've got a natural farming background. Makes sense. That adds up. You need all three of those. And so there was interest in having me join a team of people to, you know, kind of use my skills and experience in helping prop up a successful, you know, either dispensary or growth facility or both. Cultivation facility or both. And so, yes, I you know, looked at several different opportunities and connected myself with one that I thought would be successful, only to find out that there were also a lot of people in this thing for the short term that wanted to, you know, make a buck, get in, get out. You know, nothing wrong with that, but it was just different from the expectation that I had initially, kind of signing up. And then the other thing, as you're fully aware, the legality, the federal tax situation versus the state 280.
That's an issue that still needs to be resolved because it puts certain ownership people at a significant disadvantage when you start dealing with that. That's one that needs to be involved, particularly if it's going to be equitable, because in order to weather that kind of storm, you really need to be
well-heeled, as they say.
Very well-heeled in order to do that.
A lot of liquid in the hand.
And so, you know, it's high risk, high reward, but high investment on the front end until that issue is resolved. And so I think it's shaping up to be different than a lot of people expect. And now, the technical part of it, the fact that initially there was some talk about whether it would be stuff grown outside
Indoor,
versus
outdoor.
in.
Sure.
I know from a plant scientist that in order to try and grow cannabis outside with the weather extremes that we have, it would be a nightmare.
Sure.
You've got to do it indoor. And that's not to mention the security concerns that come with growing something that's highly desired as, cannabis in an outdoor facility, or outside. You really can't do it. So it's got to be internal, which again goes back to people being well-heeled, because those are investments that have to be made, high risk, high reward. So it's been different. I will say, though, that the benefits of cannabis, the health benefits, the medicinal benefits of that plant being able to make people comfortable, to make them more relaxed, I think it's something that's going to continue to grow. And so cannabis as a product, probably going to be something that we will, just have to get accustomed to. And I think the federal government and society will have to get accustomed with, what, there was a time when alcohol was prohibited. I enjoy a drink. I drink responsibly. But after a long day, I will enjoy a beverage.
Indeed.
And it should be my right to do that. And if people so choose to do that responsibly with cannabis, I don't have a problem with that being part of it too. But the medical cannabis, again, I think it's here to stay. But there are some things that certainly need to be done in order for that industry to be equitable and as far-reaching as it needs to be.
A litany, and I intend to unpack that more with our listeners, from universal testing for cannabis so that it can properly be treated and sold across state lines, to the compliance and financial aspects of it, to the legalities of it, medical versus recreational, federal versus state. There is so much to do, and we'll unpack that later. We've got a couple more questions for you. Talking about policy. We're on the back end of the big, beautiful bill. And my staff, my team, we've unpacked it, and we're going to have an episode on that and what impacts it'll have. As we know, each administration, governments come and go with the new administration. Right now, today's flavor won't be tomorrow's flavor in 4 years. Clinton's favor wasn't the favor of the Bush favor, so it's going to change. Talk to us as a farmer, and your background in USDA. What should policymakers and agencies like the USDA be doing to ensure that small farmers, black farmers, and others have access to funding and or opportunities amidst this new big, beautiful bill and what it may or may not be doing to our farmers across the country?
There's some positive things in it, and I haven't fully unpacked it. I'll admit. There are some things that cause concern.
Sure.
In the big, beautiful bill. This is going to have to be funded. And when you cut in certain areas, the impacts of those cuts need to be evaluated. So we were talking earlier about who's at the table. You really need to talk to those people that are going to be impacted if funding in certain areas, Medicaid, I've heard a lot about the cuts there. You really got to understand and make atonements for those people that are going to have less than what they went into it with. From a farm standpoint, there's certain things in there that quite honestly cause concern. There's an increase, I understand, in reference prices.
It is.
Reference prices tend to pay on the back end. But they assume that everyone was at the table equitably when those factors that determine how much a farmer is going to get from reference prices will actually get. If a farmer is at a significant disadvantage based on lower reference prices, when you increase the reference prices, you actually increase the gap between the haves
and the
have-nots. And the impacts of that need to be evaluated. Perhaps there are some things that need to be done in order to bring that more into alignment, if you will.
Well, it is my hope that those farmers that went on to be bank owners in our small rural towns that also then went on to be hospital owners in our small rural towns. When we're looking at farming or Medicaid and who is at the table, it's a big trickle down on the overall totality of what this big, beautiful bill does when you speak about who is actually at the table.
Yeah.
And so it is my hope that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater with this big, beautiful bill, and we give it some. You got to have a piece of legislation, no different than the Affordable Care Act and how Arkansas has come along and now how Arkansas works. We unpacked the bill that we didn't like to make certain that it could fit the 3 million people of Arkansas, and I hope that the same can be done with this big, beautiful bill. Last two questions. Vision for the future, looking back and looking ahead, how would you categorize Arkansas's evaluation in agriculture? What excites you the most, and what still needs to change to strengthen farming as a profession and a way of life? So thinking back from where you came from and looking ahead, what do you think in your evaluation of Arkansas excites you the most, and what do we need to maybe look at changing to strengthen us for the future?
Arkansas it is the natural state. Used to be called the land of opportunity. But we are blessed, and we're sitting right here. My primary crops are corn, rice, and soybeans. We try to irrigate all we can, and through participation in programs, I've been able to not just improve irrigation, but improve irrigation efficiencies across the farm. We've got to continue to make those kinds of investments that allows us to be productive in a changing climate. The extremes are a little worse. It gets a little hotter. It gets a little colder. Droughts last a little longer. Wet seasons last a little longer. I think those things are a strong indication that, the Earth's ability to buffer itself due to a depleting ozone layer is real. It doesn't mean that, we need to be alarmist, but there are certain things that we need to do. And I think what I like about Arkansas is that when you look at, and I'm a land grant guy, right? Teaching, research, extension. When you look at those three, and you look at the strength of the university, both, my alma mater, our alma mater, UAPB, when you look at the strength of those, I think our scientists are doing a great job of figuring out ways to keep us productive in the midst of those things. Where we need to really concentrate on, though, is making sure that those efforts reach a higher percentage of our population, making sure that all of our farmers have access to information, making sure that they all have a chance to look at technology as it's coming out, to look at new innovations as they're coming out, whether that be, demonstrations, research, whatever the case may be. And then the other thing that I think is going to impact this, you keep hearing about the new Delta, the fact that California is faced with some challenges and someone is going to have to pick up the slack. There may be an opportunity for Arkansas to pick up some of that. We need to fully explore those opportunities, again, through research, through demonstrations, and making sure that we reach all of our people. I think we've got a lot of areas that used to be urban that are now more rural. I think this urban-rural participation in agriculture, urban participation in agriculture, we're going to have to continue to explore that. And perhaps there's something there. The farmers markets in major centers like Little Rock and Northwest Arkansas, and the people that support them, they're going to need support from USDA, from University Extension, and we've got to figure out ways to do that, not at the expense of continuing to support more traditional agriculture. Don't cut out my corn, rice, soybean research, but we've got to continue to do that while we explore and advance those other avenues to make sure that we all have a chance at fully participating in this agricultural system.
And both can be done. I'm going to save my last two questions because I want to see this corn up close and take a look at your land. And I know you've got an appointment with the tractor over here to get out here on the farm. You've given us enough time today, but I'll save my last two questions for you. But you mentioned this collaborative effort, and I could only help but to think about my friends that are now in high-ranking positions that were once the head of the Delta Regional Authority.
Yeah.
And the work that they're doing in collaborative efforts between rural and urban, and and the Heartland Institute up in Northwest Arkansas, where we're trying to draw more attention and attract more individuals to the Heartland states, particularly Arkansas. So it is my hope, the same as yours, that we can find some synergies to get these things right. And I have no doubt there's too many great minds, and the state's too bold and brave and resilient to not put forth the effort to make certain that we can figure out some of these pressing issues. Let's take a walk and talk for a brief minute before I let you go, and we'll cover our last question on the future and the most pressing question I have of the day.
Gotcha.
So we'll be back in a bit.
All right.
Wow. Well, what a amazing tour. I'm glad I wore my bucket today. Seen rice, seen soybean, seen corn. You gave us a view of your cotton. What an expansive situation here, and I'm very moved. Again, this is the dirt. You know, this is the ground that my great grandmother and my grandfather and
up the way,
all of them picking out here. You know, so I'm holding a piece of my family's bloodline. Their sweat was in this dirt as sharecroppers and as slaves, and I'm blessed by that. So I'm going to close out with my final question as we stand in the middle of your cornfield today. Looking at this, I'm inspired. I consider you and many of the people that I've interviewed ahead of me as living legacies. You're leaving a cornerstone. You're paving footprints for my generation to leave to my 9-year-old son. The question of all questions for Stronger with Armstrong audience participants: do you feel today that the state of Arkansas, the farming community, and yourself are stronger today than you were yesterday? And if so, why? As I till this dirt.
Interesting question. I think, yes, we are. Because I believe in progress. And we continue, in Arkansas agriculture, we continue to make progress. Evidenced by increased yields, increased efficiency. There are some things that we need to work on, though. When I look at the little community I grew up in, 4 or 5 strong Black farming families that made a big impact on me as a scientist and as a man and as a farmer. We don't have that now. And there are things that are concerning. So while agriculture is stronger, we've got to continue to work to make sure that everyone gets to participate in that more vibrant agricultural system. Me personally, yes. Eddie, I've had the opportunity to go places and talk to people and see things that, as that 10th child growing up in Hooker, I never would have dreamed of. I've had that opportunity. But it happened because of the foundation that I had. When we lose that foundation, we tend to decrease the likelihood of the next DeWayne Goldmon being able to do that, and that causes concern. So we've got to keep our hand on the plow to make sure that those opportunities in Arkansas agriculture, as in world agriculture, continue to be spread among all of our communities.
I love it. You know, my dad used to tell me in tough times, focus on your row. One row at a time. Hold your row. And so as a new foundation layer for the next generation, I'm inspired, I'm encouraged, I am stronger, because I feel like if I can do this and you can do what you did, and I've seen way more than a little kid from 2600 John Ashley Drive could have imagined. And I hope to expose more young people to it. So we want to thank you today for giving us time and energy of yours. I know you got to get out here on the farm today. As I've always said, thank you guys for tuning in today. And we certainly hope that this episode of Stronger with Armstrong left you stronger today than you were before you tuned in. Until next time, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, brother.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. Please be sure to follow us on all social media platforms, streaming platforms, and be sure to subscribe.